Okay, so welcome everyone to the Tech Meetup, sponsored by Content.ai and MMT. And today we're going to be talking about hints and tips for new developers. So we've got fantastic speakers here to talking about all their different experiences and different levels of their development and experiences. So I'm looking forward to today's session. Excuse me, got a cough, but I'll try not to do too much of that. But who am I? So basically, I'm Ilesh Mistry. I'm the founder and organizer of the Tech Meetups, and I'm a senior front-end engineer and a Content.ai MVP. My contact details are on the right, so should you want to connect and things like that, just use the QR code on the right. A little bit about the Tech Meetups. They generally are excuse me, front-end driven topics, but we try and cater for different things in the community. So things like AI, maybe women in tech or mental health. We've touched on lots of those topics as well. So we have different things. Obviously follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter to kind of get the latest updates on things. And if you want to either sponsor an event or want to kind of talk at a future event or know somebody else who would be interested on a particular topic and things like that, please do reach out and then we can kind of get in touch and arrange something soon. A little bit about sponsors. So Content.ai is a headless CMS that enables organizations to govern all things to deliver outstanding experiences. Again, you can use their QR codes on the right-hand side as well to get in contact with them. And MMT is similar, so an agency that are digital change makers that focus on digital experience, digital products, and digital transformations. Again, you know, if you want to get in touch with them, use the QR code on the right-hand side as well. Before we get started, obviously we're recording this event. You know, if you've got any questions, please add it to the chat, and then we can kind of pick it up at the end of each session. If you've got time, please do share it on social media, and there is a chance to win some swag. So this is what you could win. I know Ted's won this already, but you know, if you want a chance to win this, you know, use that QR code, and I will be circulating the link throughout the session anyway. So don't worry if you can't capture that right now. Excuse me, but the main reason we're here is to kind of listen to great speakers here. So the first one's going to be Millie, who's going to be talking about utilizing feedback for growth. Then we've got Ted, who's going to be talking about hints and tips for new developers. Then we've got Nicola, who's going to be talking about creating a CV that gets you interviews. So that's going to be really important as well for, you know, up-and-coming developers. And then Abdul's going to finish us off with do's and don'ts for new developers. So really good mix. I'm excited to kind of see these sessions. So I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to hand over to Millie, and then just let me know when you're ready as well.
Thank you. So
No
I'll
worries.
just share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can, yeah. Yeah, but it's in the sort of edited view, yeah?
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you. So my name is Millicent, Didacus, and today I'll be presenting on utilizing feedback for growth as a new developer. I am a software engineering placement student at MMT, and I started my placement journey September 4th, 2023, and I've been with MMT for 6 months now, and I'll be completing my placement early September this year. And this is my LinkedIn code if you would like to connect, or just type in my name, Millicent Didacus, and it will pop up. So today I'll be talking about what exactly feedback is and trying to help us understand the difference between feedback and criticism. Then I'll talk about the importance of feedback and obstacles that stop us from receiving feedback well and implementing it or taking actions. And then I'll finalize with how to utilize the feedback that we've received or the feedback that we've gotten from individuals or teammates or our managers as well. So what exactly is feedback? So feedback is information about reactions to someone's performance or behavior or actions, and it's used as a basis for improvement. So feedback is carefully chosen language. Someone can come and talk about how you did something well or not. So feedback is not just talking about what went wrong or what you need to improve upon. It's also like talking about what your strengths are, or what you excelled at, or what you need to, focus on for more development. Effective feedback is specific, effective, and constructive. So you go straight to the point as to what you want the person to hear. If it's that you want to tell the person that they are good at their job or they are doing well, or if they need to improve in a certain tech language or improve in doing something, and is effective and constructive as well. We are aiming to build somebody up and not to tear the person down. And yeah, like I said, is intended to help the individual grow and develop in their careers as developers as well. Feedback is not a waste of time. And I saw this quote: feedback, when given well, should not alienate the receiver of the feedback, but should motivate them to perform better. So when you receive feedback, you shouldn't feel discouraged or demotivated, especially if it's developmental feedback. So developmental feedback is feedback that focuses on what you need to improve on or what you need to focus on in area of development in skills or social skills, technical skills. So we shouldn't feel demotivated or demoralized when we receive feedback like that. We should embrace it and try to understand how to make us perform better in our role or career. Some examples: I think you did a great job when you documented new findings. It showed that you care very much about sharing your knowledge. Well done. I would love to see you be more involved in team meetings. We would appreciate your concerns and contributions. One of the things I admire about you is your ability to be very observant in code reviews. The team is lucky to have you. So these are carefully chosen words where we are trying to let the individual know what exactly they are doing or what exactly they need to improve upon, and is aimed at helping them to grow in their role as well and not like tearing them down. So we'll move over to the importance of feedback. The first importance is that feedback helps us to build self-awareness. There are some things that you might not know about yourself or how you come across when you do some tasks, perform some tasks, or when you behave in a certain way that will affect the team. Because as developers, we don't really work alone. We still have to interact with team members or cross-functional teams. So we would gain more understanding of how whatever we do impacts, how the impact is on other people, and then know the areas of improvement for ourselves as well. It helps us to identify our strengths and weaknesses. There might be something that you're very good at and you don't because you're focusing on other things. But when someone comes to you and be like, oh, you're very good at finding bugs, you're very good at solving this problem, it helps you to understand that, okay, you excel at something, and then there's something else that you need to focus on for development. But in all, it's just to help you grow more in your role. Thirdly, it helps to improve relationships. When you're able to receive feedback well, when you're able to, be approachable, like for someone to approach you and give you feedback, it helps to foster that trust or mutual respect and understanding between you and the person. And the person have the mind like to come back to give you more feedback, or when they see that you're taking it well, then they can be able to approach you next time for more feedback. It helps to foster learning and development. So when you get this feedback, maybe developmental feedback, you are forced to, go to acquire knowledge, maybe watch some courses, read through documentation, and you're consistently refining your skills. And this helps to, improve your learning, the knowledge that you have, and then in your development. Lastly, it helps to enhance performance. when you're continuously refining your skills and acquiring new knowledge, your performance is being enhanced, and whatever you do, you have more knowledge about it, and it helps you to move towards achieving your goals more effectively. So we'll go to obstacles. These are the things that hinder us from receiving feedback well. So there's some times where feedback is being misunderstood, or feedback is not really a great term in some people's dictionaries, but we should all aim to continuously ask for feedback, continuously receive feedback, as it will help us in our roles. The first one is wrong timing. There might be some times where you're not in the mood to receive developmental feedback, or you have a lot going on, or maybe personally you're going through something, or you have deadlines to meet. That is not the best time for someone to bring both developmental feedback and just positive feedback, because you might not take it well, you might not know how to act upon it, or you might not be in the right frame of mind to do anything about it. Second one is pride. Sometimes we might feel like we know better than the person that is giving us feedback, or we feel like we are more qualified than the person giving us feedback, and it blocks off the openness that we would need to receive that feedback well. Thirdly is simply misunderstanding the feedback and maybe jumping into conclusion, not trying to understand the message that the person is trying to pass across, or how exactly it impacted or affected that person in that particular way. And lastly, feeling attacked. So when you perceive criticism or hostility, or you feel like this particular person giving you feedback doesn't like you, and you just take it that whatever they are saying is nonsense, and you don't need to listen to them or act upon what they are telling you that you need to be doing, or even if they praise you that you excel at something, you might still not take it in a right frame of mind, because you might just perceive that they're trying to criticize you or be sarcastic about it. So I'll talk about utilizing feedback for growth. When we've received this feedback, when we've tried to overcome these obstacles that stop us from receiving feedback well, how do we then utilize the feedback for growth? The first one is listening actively. So when you listen actively, you understand the underlying message that that feedback is trying to give you. You're listening to understand, and not listening to argue or defend yourself, or try to say why you did in a particular way, why you did in a certain way. Especially if they're saying they don't like the way you behave when they point out some things, or during code reviews, and you're trying to defend yourself while you're doing like that. No, you need to actively listen to the feedback. And like I said, have it at the back of your mind that the person giving you feedback is trying to make you better at what you're doing. They have your best interest at heart. So you don't need to feel attacked, but you just need to listen actively. And then also be aware of your responses. How is your body language? What are you doing? Are you constantly interrupting the person? How are you responding to that feedback that is being given to you? Because like I said, receiving feedback well can also help, foster good relationships, mutual trust, and respect between you and the person, either you and your manager or your teammates or team member. Understanding the message goes hand in hand with actively listening. And if you don't understand, you can ask questions to further clarify what the person is trying to tell you. The next one is to reflect and decide what to do. When you've understood the message, you have to reflect upon it and then decide what to do. There are some times that feedback doesn't require you to do anything. It might just be something you need to be aware of. But then in the case of maybe you need to learn more of React and TypeScript, and you need to decide what to do about it. Maybe if you want to allocate 4 hours during the week to watch a course or read documentation, or invest in a project using React to improve your skills in React, then you take action. I know that most of us still deal with procrastination, both at work and in our personal lives, but taking action during the time frame, like when the feedback has been given, it helps a lot to solidify what that feedback, the importance, the reason for that feedback. And it also makes the person that have given you the feedback, it makes them know that you are interested in your own professional growth or personal growth, and you are interested in listening to people. And the important thing there is when you take what others have said and you're acting upon it, they see you as a good team member, someone that is willing to listen to them and willing to improve upon the places that you need to improve upon. Then the last one is to follow up. It's optional, but if someone gives you feedback and you've tried to take action, you can go back to the person to maybe track your progress, or you can go back to the person if you're stuck somewhere to still further clarify if this is what you should be doing, or what you think they said you should be doing. So like I said, it's optional, but it's also important if you can do that. Yeah. So in conclusion, feedback is very important for personal and professional growth. It helps to save time. So if you're trying to figure it out on your own, it will take a lot of time. But when people are there to just tell you, so this is where you're excelling at, this is what you need to improve on, it helps to save time, because then you would have a clearer view of what you need to be doing, have a clearer view of what you're good at, and how it will affect your choices in life as well. So it's good for both professional and personal growth. And then we talked about the different things that can hinder us from receiving feedback well, which is wrong timing, pride, misunderstanding, and feeling attacked. So we need to be aware of ourselves, and whenever we are receiving feedback and we portray any of these things, we need to be aware and be like, okay, I just had pride now. Okay, I felt attacked or something like that. We need to work on it, because it will hinder us from receiving good feedback in the future. Feedback is coming from someone that wants to see you do better and be better. So just have that at the back of your mind, that feedback is not coming from a place of contempt or hatred or someone just trying to pick on you. But like I said, constructive feedback is not criticism. Criticism is just, going at whatever you're doing wrong and trying to tear you down for it. And you also have the right to challenge the feedback respectfully. And what I mean by that is, you can ask Christian and be like, so why exactly do you want me to change my behavior in this or something? Or try to change the feedback, or try to explain, no, try to have a discussion, an open discussion with the person about this thing. And if it's really how you're doing it, if it's really what you want to do about it, and you see that it's not really affecting anyone, you can also try to respectfully challenge the feedback. Or if the feedback came from just one person, but more than 2 or 3 other people see you in a different light, you can also try to talk about it with the person with an open mind. Active listening is one of the great ways of receiving feedback. So this is the stage where someone can easily misunderstand feedback. This is the stage where it can make or mar your relationship with the person, because if you just jump into conclusion, or you don't listen very well, or you don't understand and you don't ask questions about the feedback, and you just go away like that, it can damage the relationship that you have with the person. It can just damage the trust as well, and the respect that you or the person you might have for each other. Thank you for listening to my presentation. And if you have any questions, I'll take it now.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Any questions for Mimi?
I don't have any.
I think I have one.
Yeah, go for it, Ted.
What's one time that you realized that you weren't receiving feedback well, and how did you handle that?
Okay, so yes, when I didn't receive feedback well, it was from someone that I perceived hostility from. So it was when I already started my placement program, and from someone I received hostility from. So whatever that person was saying, I didn't seem to listen, because I just felt it was coming from a place of hatred or contempt. But I had to I had to like review how I'm actually listening to feedback, because I saw that there was a difference in me receiving it from someone else that I actually have like respect for. And I told myself it wasn't fair that I wasn't like seeing both of them in the same light, and it made me to miss out on the other things that the person was saying as well. But now I've learned that even if it might be coming from a place of hatred or contempt, just trying to understand where the feedback is coming from and knowing if it has grounds for something I need to maybe take action or reflect upon. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's hard to receive feedback sometimes, and that's interesting. You said the source. The source is always, yeah,
Mm.
got to keep that in mind. Indeed.
I've got a question, and this is more related to the fact that, say, have you come across a scenario where someone's given you too much feedback and it's like overwhelming, and how did you handle that kind of scenario?
Okay, so just recently when I received my review, my probation review from my manager, it was like a collection of feedbacks from people that I've worked with, but I already came prepared, so I was writing down some of the things that she was saying, and then I had to classify them. I had to classify them under headings. So for the technical skills feedback, I wrote down like what I was expected to improve upon for soft skills, and then for any other thing I just need to reflect upon or be aware, but grouping them into the categories and helped me to have a head start in deciding what I want to do with the feedback and how I can take action.
It's a great way of handling that, actually. It's good. Any other further questions from Mimi? No?
Oh, I don't have any.
So thank you for your presentation. Really good job, and great feedback for you. Really good presentation.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to hand over to Ted. So just let us know when you're ready, Ted.
I'm ready to go. So my name's Ted Stresen-Reuter. I'm the CTO at Secret Source Technology. We are a nearshore web development team extension company. We've actually worked together with MMT at one point, which was a really good opportunity and experience. And during this presentation, I'd like to try an experiment. I don't have any slides. I'm just going to tell you my story. And I'm going to be sharing what I believe are my top 10 tips for beginning developers, including a few extra for debugging. And the experiment that I'd like to try is I'd like to ask people to open your microphones, and maybe if you're coughing, you can mute temporarily. But I'd like you to open your microphones because I'm not going to be able to see your faces necessarily, and I'd like to hear your reactions. And you can feel free to interrupt at any time because this is just me telling a story. So with that, I'm going to get started. One sec. Right. So I started programming when I was about 12. That was last century, literally. I wrote a program with a friend of mine in his room, in his bedroom, on a TRS-80, which was a computer that had, I don't know, maybe 4K of memory at the most. And we spent the entire day writing code and then printing it out to check to see if we had any errors, because that was the easiest way to see it. You didn't, the screen could only handle, I don't know, 60 characters or something like that. And so you'd print it out and check it, print it out. And by the end of that experience, I was like, I'm never doing this again. It was absolutely awful. And looking back on that, I think about all the things that I've learned since then, and I wonder, had I known these things, would I have continued?
Oh, Ted, you've just muted yourself.
Yeah.
How do you suppose that happened? That's weird. I didn't touch anything. Where did I
That's Tech
leave
for
off?
you.
Where did I leave off? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Bedroom. where you guys started off.
Yeah, where did I stop? What was the last thing you heard?
Bedroom part, I think. Yeah.
Bedroom
The what?
printing out.
Where you guys
Right,
you know,
right, that's
stuff-
awful.
So
Yeah.
we're printing out. Yeah, I know it was awful. So anyway, I look back and I think, had I known the 10 things I'm going to share today, would I have changed? Well, maybe I would have. Probably. Fast forward 30 years, and I find myself programming again, but this time it's in a scripting language, and I begin to realize that this is my opportunity and a way for me to share with the rest of the world my ideas and my vision. And I suddenly got completely hooked on programming. It was 1991, and since then I've programmed in dozens of languages, dozens of frameworks. I've made more mistakes. I've probably written more bugs than you can even bat an eye at. Hopefully no security vulnerabilities, but you never know, right? So with that, I'm going to start with my list here. The top 10 things I think that every beginning developer ought to know. So the first thing is, the first recommendation, the first tip is don't use popular technologies just because they're popular. It's really important to analyze what you're going to be doing or what you're going to be building to decide on whether or not to use a technology. And I think the classic example of that was Macromedia Flash. I don't know how many of you know Flash, but it's a vector-based animation tool ideally used to create animations to explain things that words and pictures alone cannot explain. So often relationships between moving parts. Flash, however, was really compelling. When you'd see it on the screen, first of all, it would load instantly. So everybody would be like, oh my God, the really slow internet back when we had ISDN lines and that sort of thing, and connections were kind of slow. It was great to have an experience that was visual, that was moving, that was colorful, maybe had sound, maybe audio, video, and that loaded quickly. It was a great experience. However, Google and the rest of the search engines were unable to index the content. So companies, especially where I'm living here in Spain, would create these beautiful websites, and then they could never be found in Google because there was no content to index. And that was a classic example of picking a technology for the wrong reasons. And before I go any further, I have two questions. First of all, I did a search on Google to find out what are dead programming languages? What does Google consider to be dead programming languages? And here's the answer. So in other words, Flash has basically been killed off. It's not in this list. But there are some that many people here would be like, oh my God, that's not dead. Ruby, for one, is still very popular. R is also still very popular. Let's see some other ones. The rest of these are pretty much on their way out. But the point here I'm trying to make is simply, don't just take what other people say for granted. Do your research. Figure out what exactly you need to be doing and why are you using a technology? What advantages does it bring to the current problem that you're trying to solve? And also, before I go on, can any of you think of a technology right now that is very popular but is maybe not appropriate for SEO purposes? Should I give you a hint? Starts with an R, ends with a T.
React.
React.
Gotta be
Bingo.
React.
Pretty much every JavaScript front end right now is not helping you if SEO is a concern, if search engine optimization is important to you. You probably shouldn't be using browser rendered. Wow, that's not even a good way of explaining it. JavaScript only solutions. I mean, there are people who you can do server-side rendering of React. Working with MMT, we saw an example of that, if I'm not mistaken. And that's really the way to go. You want to deliver HTML, CSS to the browser as much as possible. So that's that. That's number 10. Number 9, my recommendation is lead yourself. What I mean by that is organize your future, your path, your professional future sort of by yourself. A lot of beginning developers think, oh, I need a senior developer to lead me, to show me the way, to show me how to do things. But quite often those senior developers aren't available. They're busy actually being senior developers. And so if you wait for a senior developer, you might find yourself waiting a long time. And it's really not necessary, because there's a lot of value that comes from reading books, writing your own blog posts, writing sample software and sharing it with other people with the internet, and then hoping for, asking people, can you look at this? Whoever, random people. Create something that you think that somebody might want to use, publish it, get feedback. And then also plan your own journey. Ask yourself, where do I want to go in 5 years? Where do I want to go in 10 years? Where do I want to go next month? That sort of thing. And think about the steps that might be necessary to get there. There's all kinds of information on the internet that allow you to do that. And you can do it. And I know you can do it because I did it 30 years ago, before we had all these books and websites and tutorials and all the support that you have these days. So these days, yeah, there's nothing stopping you from moving forward. Right, so tip number 8, use a linter. Basically, the tip is actually automate as much as possible of your programming so that you don't have to do the manual things or repetitive things again and again. Linting, formatting your source code so that it looks the same as everyone else's on a project is a great leg up when working on projects. And if at the very least, it keeps you consistent so that your source code is looking the same regardless of what document somebody's looking at. Number 7, lean on third-party libraries. So what I mean is, don't reinvent the wheel. If there's already a library out there that does what you want, use it. Now, a lot of times I've seen junior developers and beginning developers get into a bit of a pickle because they'll use a third-party library and they will not have read all of the documentation, or they simply don't understand what they've read. And they will spend hours trying stuff. Well, I tried this and I tried that and I tried this and it didn't work. Then I tried that. And often, 9 times out of 10, the library that they're using is actually open source, and the author's email address is on the GitHub page or somewhere where you can contact them. And so what I'm suggesting here is use a third-party library. If the documentation is unclear, contact the author, post a GitHub issue, or even better, the best thing to do is to create a new repo that just demonstrates the one thing you don't understand and send the link to the repo in a GitHub issue saying, can somebody help me understand why this isn't working the way I expect? That is the greatest thing you can do, because right there, you've saved everybody loads of time. You've made it crystal clear what you want, what you're looking for, the feedback you're looking for. And that technique has worked miracles for me, and it only takes a little while. I've got a few examples on the internet. If you go to my GitHub page, Ted Secret Source, you'll see there's several repositories that are exactly that. This doesn't work. What am I doing wrong? And often people will answer and help me get past whatever's blocking me. All right, so I'm going to share another screen here. This is we're down to number 6. Whenever possible, do pair programming. I don't know how many of you know what pair programming is, but essentially it's where you both sit at a computer. One person does the typing, does the driving, and the other person does the engineering in their head. That's the basic layout. Now, these days, VS Code makes that super easy, and you don't have to actually be in the same room like you used to have to be 5, 6 years ago. And you can really make great advances. This article right here has a really great overview of what pair programming is, why it works, some of the what do they call them? The myths about pair programming. Lots of people say, well, that's now you're spending 2 developers' times to develop a single feature. But what they're missing out on is you're saving time because you end up going faster because 2 sets of eyes are seeing potential problems that are being solved on the fly rather than going through a whole development cycle where I write the code, I push to a PR, the PR misses whatever it was that the pair programming would have spotted, turns into a defect, has to go back through the whole cycle again. Pair programming is great. It's a really great thing to be doing. The article is Pair Programming, Best Practices and Tools, and they have lots of great information on how to do it. That's number 6. Number 5. Right. Let's see. Right. So this one is pretty funny too. I like this one. One sec. So number 5 is learn as many frameworks and programming languages as possible. Now, I know a lot of people think, no, I have to become an expert in just one, in React, for example. I've once met a developer who didn't want to learn anything but React. And, I found it difficult to help him understand that by learning, let's just say, just to throw something out there, some sort of any kind of backend technology, he would end up learning HTTP and what all the error codes meant and how best to handle those in the front end. And, things like traversing a document hierarchy, that sort of thing, you can learn that in many different ways, not just through React. And the problem with being in a silo, so to speak, is that you have tunnel vision. You only see that one thing and you miss huge opportunities to do things better. Also, and this is totally true, I've been doing this now for so long, you see a lot of the same patterns in different frameworks. So for example, prior to about 1997 or so, the concept of MVC existed. For those of you who don't know, it's Model View Controller. It's a way of dividing up computer code so that you can sort of manage it more easily. That's been around for ages, for, I don't know, almost 30 years, probably. And I've seen that pattern repeated starting in Java struts in the late 90s, in Cold Fusion in the 2000s, in .NET in the mid 2000s, in Laravel in 2010, roughly, when I first encountered it. In, let's see, what's another common one? Java Spring Boot now, in Yi, which is a PHP open source framework. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. MVC has been around a long time. And once you learn it in one framework, you'll see that when you jump to the next framework, a lot of that knowledge is transferable. And so just sticking to one thing is just not a good idea. So I asked Google, not ChatGPT, I asked Google, how many languages should a programmer know? And the funny thing about this is you'll see that all of them, or rather none of them, say just one. They all say 3, 2, 3, 4, or more. They all list several. And I think, if anything, one of them makes the point that says you should probably know an object-oriented language, a scripting language, and a functional language, if at all possible. Uh-oh, we're all good, right? Yes, so, okay, all right. So that was number 5, and the rest I think I'll go pretty quick because I'm probably running out of time, aren't I, Ilesh? Or am I doing all right?
No, you did good. It's fine.
Okay. So number 4, never assume anything. Always ask your clients for details and clarification, but mostly why. Understanding why a client is asking for something is often the key to providing a proper solution. Again, I can't tell you how often I see this where I feel bad for the development team sometimes because they receive a requirement from the client, and I'll see them go away and discuss amongst themselves, how are we going to do this? This is really hard. The client doesn't know what they're asking for. This doesn't make any sense. And then they'll proceed to try and implement it. Instead of going back to the client and saying, listen, this doesn't make much sense to us. Can you help us understand why you're asking for this? It's a very simple question, and it's the kind that will often lead to a much better solution. And the client in the end will be grateful that you asked them why. Not that some people think, oh, well, I have to do what they said, you know. It's like, no, you have to help them solve the problem. If you don't understand the problem, which is often the answer to why are you doing this, then you aren't really in a position to be starting to program. You really need to understand why something is required. So number 3, be very clear about the task. And Juan, who's on the call right here, will know exactly what I'm talking about. There's an unambiguous way of describing what needs to be done, and it's called Gherkin. That's German for pickle, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a, let's see, is that Juan who just chimed in there? Auto pair programming, okay, cool. So Gherkin is a language created, or a way of expressing requirements, or not even requirements, but acceptance criteria popularized by Martin Fowler. And it's the general format is given, when, then. Given, I am on the home page. When I click this button, then I see something. That format is magic. When you get a requirement or a user story or a set of user stories, if you can create acceptance criteria following that format, and you can get sign off from the product owner or the client that, yes, this is what I want to have happen, you will not have any misunderstandings. It's an amazing format for communicating requirements. Number 2, we're getting to number 1, almost at number 1. Number 2, don't start any task until it can be done in less than 2 hours. Ideally less than an hour. And that may sound like, oh, come on, Ted, I can't possibly do this task in less than an hour. And the answer is, okay, fine. So how many subtasks are there in that one task? Make a list of them and write every single one down and truly analyze it and break it down into really tiny steps. The advantage to doing this is you can get very accurate estimates. If every task is less than an hour and your task is a total of maybe 5 hours or 4 hours, chances are you're going to get it done in a morning or in an afternoon. And your estimates will be right on. So take the time to do that. Also, additionally, another big advantage to doing that is you begin to see all of the actual things that you're going to have to do. Sometimes we gloss over stuff. Simple things like, oh yeah, I forgot we need an error page. Got to create an error page. It's a common thing to forget. Well, if you actually list all the little things that you have to do, it's more likely that you're going to pick up on that. And so here we are down to the number 1 tip. I'm wondering, before I give it away, what do you all think it's going to be? Juan, do you know? Is he even listening? Juan and I work together. That's why I keep calling on him. So the number 1 tip, learn to type with all 10 fingers without looking at the keyboard.
Oh.
And the reason for that is that he knew, because I go on and on about this. The keyboard is this is your hammer. This is your tool. This is the thing that you use to realize your dreams and to share your vision. That's it, man. That's the tool. And so the better you are at actually letting the ideas flow from your brain to the screen the freer you're going to be able to work and operate, and the more quickly. One thing that lots of new developers don't realize is that actually your task as a developer is often communication, not so much programming. And just as I said, number 3, I think it was ask why, you often have to write in English often what it is that you're planning on doing, whether it's a given when then, or a task description, or even a prompt for Copilot to write the test for you. You have to be able to describe that accurately. And the faster you can do that without thinking about, ooh, where's that letter, or typos, or getting things wrong, the better everything is going to go for you. And it doesn't take that long to learn to touch type. It's something you can learn in about 2 months if you practice about a half an hour every other day. So it's well worth it. And I know that wasn't what people were expecting. I'm sure people were expecting, I don't know, learn Java or something like that. But no, it's literally just learn to use your tool and be good at it. Learn the keyboard shortcuts. I mean, there's so many features that your editor and your machine itself offer that it's worth taking the time to learn how to use that thing to its fullest, which is actually the reason why I am where I am today, is because I was just a bit of a, it's a funny story. When I bought my first personal computer in 1991, it was all the money I had. It was $3,000, I think. And that was all the money that I had. And I was like, oh my God, I've just made this huge investment. I better get everything I can out of it. So I got this, the computers used to come with a big, thick book that was the documentation on how to use it. So I literally read that book, start to finish, made sure I knew everything there was to know. And that's how I learned to use my tool. So those are my top 10 tips. But before I go, I want to share one thing real quick. And with this, I'll finish up. That is tips for debugging. 1, use the scientific method religiously, and then iterate. So basically, the scientific method says create a hypothesis. This is why I think something is happening. Figure out some way to test your hypothesis, and then test it. If your hypothesis is true, then you know where the problem is. If it's false, rethink your hypothesis and come up with a new one, and then test that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the way to debug things. Just trying things. Let me try this. Wait, let me just change this variable over here. Oh, I'm going to move this line up 1. I'm going to add a condition here. You will waste hours and hours and hours. Be very religious and specific about using the scientific method, and you'll be efficient. Takes longer, yeah, because you have to hypothesize, you have to come up with tests and that sort of thing, but it will save you in the long run. It'll save you time, and you will know exactly why something is happening. It's no longer a mystery. Well, I changed this and now it works. That doesn't help you. Check the logs. Juan's heard me say that one multiple times. Server logs in particular can be very revealing when you're doing backend work. They hold the keys to what's working and why, and what isn't and why. Read the documentation. And I mean, don't assume you know something. Go back and, if you're working in a programming language and you're trying a function, or you're trying to implement some sort of a class, or I don't know, an interface or something, and it's not working, go back to the documentation and read it until you really understand it. And these days, oh my God, all of you beginning programmers, you have ChatGPT, for Christ's sake. That is a huge step up. And Copilot. Those are incredible helpful tools that will allow you to learn things at a velocity that the rest of us have never known. I recommend using to learn an interactive debugger so that you can stop execution, inspect the value of variables. That's not necessary, but it can be helpful in certain situations. When you're working on a project, when you're starting out, make sure that you're not seeing any warnings. Don't just silence them. Don't just send the -W flag. Actually fix the warnings. If it's an outdated library, if it's an incorrect use of some sort of a variable, or initializing a variable, take the time to get those things right, because today they're a warning, tomorrow they're going to be an error. So just get them fixed up front. And that way your logs will be nice and clean, and only the things that you want to see will appear in the logs. And the last one is learn how to use the logging features. And this is a key one. Many systems, logging systems, will have different levels of logging. So they might have info, warn, error, exception. And you can set the logging level so that you can just see the types of logs, that you're looking for, not just everything, which is often annoying. And with that, with that, I think I'm done. Yes, that's it. Those are all my tips and clues. And the only thing was that Copilot. Yes, definitely use Copilot. Take full advantage of it. Thank you.
Great one.
Any questions?
Any questions for Ted?
Yeah, I have a question, but it is not related to your tips. Like it's personal.
Sure.
Like, yeah. What is your specific niche in development?
Keeping developers happy.
Wow.
No, seriously, like my personal background is mostly Laravel and React, actually, these days. But I've been doing, I've worked, God, Jesus, I started in using Perl, in the mid 90s, and just HTML and CSS and just a little bit of JavaScript. I then learned Microsoft Access, created a whole billing platform in Access. And then I moved on to CMSs. And I'm talking 1998, 97, 98. Implemented a custom search engine called HTDig, which was one of the first open source web spiders. It's now defunct. It's no longer supported. I think it might just be completely gone from the internet. Did some work in ASP Classic, Cold Fusion, worked with a Google Mini, which was a search appliance, which is super interesting. Great experience. Jesus, then I moved on to, I used things like SAMP, what was it called? Soups, XOOPS, which is a PHP-based CMS prior to things like WordPress. Then, of course, I got involved in WordPress. And then Laravel, and along the way learned all kinds of things about system administration, because back in the day there was nobody that I could lean on to set up a local web server so that I could do local development. Jesus, I'm telling you, I can remember just being completely lost when on my Macintosh, this is 1995, I had a Mac LC, and I was learning about making web pages. And at the time, you could load a web page in your browser just like you can now. And I found that I had a picture, for example. And on my Mac, when I would load it on my Mac, the picture would display properly. But when I put it on a web server and tried to load it, the picture was broken. And I don't know, somewhere I was on a user forum. This was like Usenet. I don't know if you know what Usenet is. If we have any old people here, it was a messaging platform on mainframes in the 80s and 90s. It's still around, believe it or not. And I asked somebody, why do I see it okay on my machine but not on the web server? And they said, does it have a file extension? I said no, because I was just on the Mac. You didn't need to have 3-letter extensions or 4-letter extensions. You could just name the file and that was it. And then they said, try it with an extension. So I tried it with the extension, and indeed it worked. So I wrote back and I said, well, why the hell is it working in both places? And they said, well, that's because the MIME type is associated with a file extension. Of course, at that point, my brain just went, I'm like, what is a MIME type? Is it like a type that just goes, does miming or what? I had no clue. I suppose I know what the MIME stands for now, multi-part internet something encoding or something like that. And it was just this sort of, don't be afraid of terminology, explore it. So I looked up what is a MIME type, and then slowly I began to understand that there's sort of two lines of communication in the web. There is the file extensions, and then there's also these MIME types and the headers which you never see unless you're running a web server, and you can dump the headers to a file and check the logs and stuff like that. Sorry, that was a bit of an aside. I could go on and on. It took 30 years of experience here, so I got stories, but I don't want to take up any more time. So
Thank you. Yeah,
sure.
I will wait to contact you personally then.
Sure. Any other cues?
One.
Was that a question? Did somebody? Oh, that was a thumbs up, wasn't it? Yeah.
Is that question one
right.
or no? Sorry, I have no mic.
Sorry,
Okay.
I have no micro.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, anyway, thank you all. I hope you found it helpful.
Yeah, it was really good. Like great tips, and like lots of questions on each of those tips were and great explanation. So really good.
Right.
Thanks, Ted.
Sure.
Right. So thanks, Ted. So over to Nicola. Let us know when you're ready as well, please.
I will just try and share my screen. I do have some slides. So can you all see my screen? Excellent. So first of all, apologies. I'm probably going to talk fairly fast. I could probably take 2 hours or even more on this subject. So if I speak quickly, apologies. If anybody wants to contact me at the end and has any further questions, that would be wonderful. So just a little intro to myself. My name's Nicola Pickup. Why am I qualified to talk to you about CVs? I have had, at last count, 38 jobs, and I'm sure there's quite a few that I've forgotten about along the way. I've literally applied for hundreds of jobs and had reasonably good success. More recently, I have been working on skills boot camps. I'm not a software developer. I'm a failed software developer. I went through a software development boot camp and was headhunted and became project manager, and my life's taken a little bit of a different direction now. I actually work mainly on skills boot camps for digital marketers, which is really my background, which is why I'd got interested in software development. So you'll have to forgive me if I've used some incorrect terminology on here. I am definitely not a software developer by any stretch. So I do a lot of helping of my skills bootcamp students preparing for entry-level jobs. So I've done lots of presentations about getting junior jobs in digital marketing. So I've just translated this over a little bit for software development. I also recruit digital marketing trainers, so I filter through a lot of CVs as well. And I just wanted to stress that my opinions are completely my own. You will speak to lots of other so-called experts who are very adamant that things should be done one way, things should be done a different way. A lot of these things are subjective, and they will depend on exactly where you are within your career. So, for example, I would recommend for a junior developer, and maybe Ted will back me up or disagree with me completely, but that probably a single page is plenty. It's better to have some impact with a single page than waffle on for more than one page. But for somebody like Ted, he's probably going to have 2, 3, 4 pages, maybe 4 pages, a little bit much. So there's no hard and fast rule. Just because I'm saying I believe it's correct for junior developers, it wouldn't be correct if you are much more experienced. So there's a bit of generalization going on. Normally I'd have a bit of an explanation either way, but we haven't got a lot of time, so I'm not going to go too much into that. So first of all, why do we need to have a good CV? Well, obviously, we want to get an interview. CVs need to stand out. I actually saw this posted today from Adam Broder. Adam Broder is well worth following if you want to get into software development. He's a recruiter. He really knows his stuff. I don't always agree with everything he says. He's based in America, and some things are a little bit different in America to how they are here in the UK, for those of us who are in the UK, that is, of course. But generally, he's got some really wise words to say. But basically, when you're applying for a job, there's generally going to be a lot of applications, and the recruiter hasn't got a lot of time to look through your CV. There's all sorts of stats here. The one that Adam's put, I think, is 7 seconds. So that came from Forbes. I've seen it written as low as 2 or 3 seconds that a hiring manager might look at your CV for. So it needs to have some impact. And that's why you generally don't want more than 1 page as a junior developer. So definitely recommend worth following Adam. So the first thing that I would recommend doing when you are writing your CV, and I would recommend writing a different CV or adapting it for every job that you go for, because every job description, all the requirements are going to be slightly different. You will probably need a general CV that you might want to send for speculative applications, or you might want to send to a recruiter who hasn't got a particular job in mind for you. So that would be nice and generic. And to do that, I would look at a number of different job descriptions of jobs that you are qualified or almost qualified. You don't have to be 100% qualified to apply for a job. Adam's done quite a few posts on it before, and if you are hitting between 50 and 70% of the requirements, essentially the wish list that the company has, 50% is probably on the low side, but if you hit 70% of the requirements and don't hit the other 30%, do not worry. Do still go ahead and apply. If you're under 50%, then you're probably wasting everybody's time. But have a look at those job descriptions. And I like to sometimes print them out and highlight the things that I can do, that I've got lots of experience in, or that I can do, or that I can demonstrate. This is one thing that you can even use AI to help you with. You can copy and paste that job description. You can put it in ChatGPT, Claude, and he'll say Bard, Gemini as it is now, and you can say, pull me out those important keywords in there. And those are the kind of things that you want to get in your CV. You don't want to be sending off a CV that doesn't cover those points. Even if you can hit those targets, if you're not telling the employer, they might not want to interview you. Your job is to convince them that you are suitable for that job. So you might think it's an absolute pain in the backside adapting your CV every time you apply for a new job, but I would recommend when you're applying, go for quality over quantity. Don't just fire off the same CV to every single company. Take the time. People want to hire people that want to do that particular job, and they want to hire people that have demonstrated to them that they can do that job. So I would personally absolutely go for quality over quantity. Even if you only apply for 1 a week and it's a really good application, that's better than just firing 100 off. That it gets soul destroying. If you've applied for 100 jobs and you've not heard anything back, you're doing something wrong. So it would definitely be my approach to go for the quality. So when it comes to your personal details, I've crossed a few things out here. We don't need to know whether you're a Mrs., Miss or Ms. You know, that's very old fashioned. Maybe a few of you are younger here than me, but traditionally you'd always put things like that. You'd put in your date of birth. We don't need to know your date of birth. These are the key things that we don't even need addresses. I mean, I always was taught when I was growing up, you always put your address on. It doesn't matter in this day and age. If it's an in-office job, you want to show them that you're in a reasonable commuting distance. There's no point applying for a job in London if it's in office. If you're living in Manchester, just put the beginning of your postcode or the city or town that you live in. That is absolutely sufficient. We want to spend more of our space taken up with important things rather than stuff that's not that important. If you are on social media, I've actually put that in probably more for digital marketers. It's more important to see social media profiles for digital marketers if they're going into creating social media posts, etc. So probably for software development, the one that's going to be relevant is LinkedIn. If you're posting on there, and Ted said something great. He was talking about writing blogs. You can write posts on LinkedIn to show your knowledge as you're learning, show your learning journey on there. In fact, Ted really set this up well, because a lot of the things that you said I ticked and underlined because they actually follow very much into what I'm saying here and what you should be including. So use your GitHub. If you've got a portfolio, use that. I mean, we could do a whole session on portfolios. We don't have time to do that today. If you want to know more about portfolios, I would highly recommend following my friend James Alderman. He does software development portfolio reviews and digital marketing portfolio reviews. I'll put his YouTube channel in the chat for you to check out. Definitely worth having a look at. And the portfolio is one thing that's going to help you stand out, because when you junior developer sometimes going into your first job, that's all you've got to show. You haven't years of experience to talk about. So having a portfolio, being present on GitHub, talking about things on LinkedIn is going to show that you are keen and interested. So a few things that we don't need to include there. In different countries, a headshot is kind of a thing to do. In the UK, we don't generally have headshots. And in some countries, actually, headshots aren't supposed to be on your CV because of biases. To me, it just takes up more room where you could be talking about your software development and the things that you're keen to do. If you've got a dodgy email address, come up with a more professional one. And if you are on social media, and you've got some questionable content on there, certain employers do check you out on social media, so lock down your profile. Just make sure that friends only can see it. Perhaps employers shouldn't be looking at that, but certain ones do. So what have we got next? Your profile summary. People call it different things. It doesn't need to have a header. It doesn't need to say, this is my profile, but it's the statement at the top of your CV, which is what recruiters see first. We want you to stand out. This is the really key part of your CV. It's hopefully going to have a brief overview of your skills. You've noticed that I've highlighted, made bold, relevant. We don't want to know that you dog won at Crufts. We want to know things that are relevant and important in the software development world. Any experience that you've got there and any achievements. So if you've been on a skills bootcamp and your project won the top project, those are the kind of things that we want to include there. So I've got two examples here that I'm going to let you have a quick read through. And if you want copy of the slides later, please feel free, because I'm not going to give you too long to have a look, but I'll just give you a moment to look at the one on the left and then the one on the right. Okay, so I know you've not had long to look at them, but I'm sure you'll see the difference between them. This is the same person. The one on the left is fine, if they're applying for a job in retail, maybe that's absolutely okay. But the one on the right mentions keywords, things that a software development company are going to be looking for. It's not saying that they're the most experienced person in the world. It's talking about what they want to do, their aspirations. I mean, it's not amazing. I've written that using Claude AI. I would tweak and play around with that, but it takes a long time. I didn't spend that time doing it for this because I thought that would be enough to make the point. But that's the kind of thing that we want to see. That's why you read through the job description in the first place, and you would probably tweak those different programs to include the ones that the job description had mentioned. It's as simple as that. It's like passing a test at school. You're almost looking at the questions of what it is that they want, and you're giving the answer, particularly in this top bit. And I don't think you even really need to ask you the question, if you were the hirer, which one are you going to give the interview to? And it's exactly the same person. Do use AI. Use it to get started and then edit and refine. When I'm speaking to digital marketers, especially ones that are going to be doing copywriting and writing social media posts, it is super, super important that it doesn't look like it's written by AI. However, I would say it's probably less important for software developers. They're not necessarily expecting your English to be top notch, but you still don't want it to look like it is AI. I mean, often you can, I can spot them a mile off, to be honest. It's fairly easy. So we do want it to look as good as possible, but we don't have to be sweat on it too much as software developers, I think. I don't know if Ted, Ilesh would maybe agree with or disagree with me there. Okay. So usually with AI, there's a bit of cheese and filler words like leverage. Those are the kind of things that you want to cut out. They're supposed to be meaningful, but it's waffle. It's, you know, doesn't really mean anything. So that's the kind of thing that I'm looking to cut out. When I'm using AI, I'm usually typing in, stop being too, I'm sorry, Ted, but be too American, too cheesy, too AI, sorry.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sorry, I'm going to get shot for that. But those are the kind of things that I'm saying.
Understating is a really good thing. It's a skill for Americans that we need to learn for sure.
And it's about knowing your market, isn't it? If you're applying for a role that's remote in America, then, you know, fill your boots, I guess. Know your audience.
Yeah.
So that is really the most important part. So I'm going to really kind of skip quickly through the next bits. If you've got any great achievements to highlight, I put a star next to this because as junior developers, you might not have any great software development achievements to talk about. So only put them in there if they are relevant. If you've come top on your skills boot camp in particular projects and things, those are the kind of things that you would put there. You might include any awards or certifications. If you've been part and, you know, published anything, you know, maybe unlikely at this stage, but if you have, definitely include them. And if you worked on any successful projects, you can either include them there or at the end. We're going to talk about extra stuff right at the end as well. So work experience essentially wants to be in reverse chronological order. So the most recent first, it wants to include those key things in there. If you have been a waiter or a waitress, worked in retail, those kind of things, you don't really need to put a full explanation. It's not relevant software development. You know, of course, there are some skills that you will use and that are transferable skills are really important, but everybody knows that those kind of jobs need good customer service, good communication. Spend your time talking about things that the hirer might not necessarily know about you. And don't just list your duties. People don't care about different things. They're caring about, you know, problem solving is a really big one for software development. If you can show that you're good at problem solving anywhere within that CV, that's a really top thing that businesses want to see. So Education, similarly, include your relevant qualifications, reverse chronological order. If you did an Open University degree 20 years ago, whilst it might be really impressive, you might want to give you the space over to something else, should I say. If you're a recent graduate, however, you don't want to show that you've got 3 years gap in there, even if you've done a degree that's not so relevant to software development. So you would want to keep that in. It's deciding whether your work experience in different areas is more important or your education. And the older you get, if you're my age, your education isn't that important. Even if I'd done computer science 30 years ago, it actually wouldn't be that relevant now, although it does show that you've had that long-term interest in the area, but you wouldn't be a junior developer still, hopefully, if it was 30 years ago that you'd done that. If you have been on a skills boot camp, put that in there and explain the number of hours. An employer doesn't necessarily know that a skills boot camp can be between 60 and 80 hours of study. They might think it's 3 hours a week. So it's your job to tell them. You tell them what the core software is that you've learnt on that. That is super, super important. If you've done any online courses or certifications, if you've done Codecademy, Treehouse, anything like that, that's where you put in there. That's going to be more relevant than your maths GCSE, even though obviously that is, you know, if you are fairly young, that's still going to be added there too. So sorry, I can feel myself talking faster and faster. Skills, so important. As software developers, we sometimes forget about the soft skills, but I have had lots of talks with employers, and actually it's the soft skills that they are often looking for. You can teach someone to code, but actually sometimes it's aptitude and attitude really that employers are looking for. They're looking for things like problem solving skills. I highlighted something that Ted had said somewhere, things like pair programming, those kind of the soft skills that he mentioned at number 4, asking those questions about why. It makes your client's life so much easier. If you've got a software developer that can talk to a client rather than being scared of them, those are the types of people that employers want to employ. So don't forget your soft skills. Don't just go in for your technical skills. Mention your soft skills as well. We've got some at the top. If you don't really know the difference between hard skills, soft skills, technical skills, that, you know, they're called different things in different places. Just Google them. There's loads of information out there on the internet about them. I have a list now, and this is where my technical lack of knowledge might be shown up here. This is straight from AI, but those are the kind of technical skills. I think there are a few soft skills thrown in there as well, but those are the kind of things that employers want to see on your CV. So really have a think about those and match those up to what the employer is looking for, or if it's a general CV, you know, make sure that they're fairly rounded. Okay. Then finally, my last proper slide, personal projects, portfolios, links to those are all super, super important. This is what is going to make you stand out from the other candidates. I promise you. Most people don't have a portfolio. Ted.
Sorry, putting my hand down. Right. So one of the things that many developers I've interviewed sort of bring up in the interview, when I ask them about their GitHub repos and that sort of thing, they're like, I'm like, why aren't you publishing anything? And they're always like, well, I don't really have anything interesting to publish. What do you say to that?
I think it's showing your development. I think people are embarrassed, people are scared, and the little bit of software development I've done, as a perfectionist, I know that I would feel uncomfortable about publishing it. But for an employer, that is what they want to see. They want to see that growth. You mentioned about problem solving and posting and showing somebody what problem you're experiencing and being able to troubleshoot that. As an employer, to me, that is gold. That is how you want to see the way that somebody can work. So as embarrassing, it's embarrassing. You know, I would be cringing it. I mean, my digital marketing portfolio, especially as a digital marketing trainer, which is my main role, is non-existent because I feel it's got to be perfect. But if I was a junior, my reputation goes before me now, so it's less important for me. But if I was starting out, it is super important because I wouldn't have a reputation. Things like taking part in hackathons, it shows that you're interested. Code wars, all those kind of things. Ted mentioned writing blogs and things, whether it's on your own personal website, whether you're writing on LinkedIn. It shows that interest, that even the conversations that you're having with other developers on LinkedIn, it's getting you noticed within the industry, it's building up connections. And if that person then posts a job the week later, you've already had that bit of connection with them over a couple of months where you've commented, liked, shared. They're much more likely to interview you, especially if you drop them a quick note, say, I've just applied for that role that you've advertised within your company. I mean, at the bottom there, you'll see my little gas and electricity calculator. I mean, I actually did that as it was a bit of fun to see, because even since I did my software development course, there's been lots of talk about AI. So I was having a go with ChatGPT to see how good it was. I mean, it's rubbish. You've got to know a bit yourself. But it really helped me, and it really helped me troubleshoot. And I was actually able to create that, and I was very proud of myself. And I did a mortgage calculator, and it's the kind of things that people do on the boot camps. But if you're applying from a boot camp, every single student on that boot camp is going to have done the same thing. You want to show that you're doing something different as well, because you enjoy it and you want to do it. Ted's nodding there. You want to employ people that are keen and interested, don't you? You don't want to employ somebody who's just there because they think that software developers earn a lot of money. So, yeah, that's really that's me.
Nicola, real quick. Sorry to interrupt like this, but this is such a hot topic because it is so fundamental and so important in expressing who you are. The concept of a repo with examples of your work. But I can tell you at the same time that I have lots of candidates who don't do it out of fear, that I myself have been down the path where I've published things that are completely half-baked and without the context of here's why I did this, just look like I'm you know, a useless developer. Any thoughts or ideas about how to sort of dress up your repo? I don't know. Any thoughts about that at all?
To be honest, I haven't, and I suppose that's where I'd flip it round on you, and the experience that you have as an employer would be much more valuable than anything that I could add there, I'm sure.
Well, you know, honestly, look, in those cases, because I'm a curious person, and I will often, when I see something that doesn't make sense, I'll ask rather than just making assumptions or judging. I'm different in that way, but I can tell you how many employers or potential employers that I've come across that they don't even bother to ask. And so I was hoping maybe you'd have some tips. I mean, it crossed my mind once that one potential way to go about it is if you have a bunch of repos that don't make sense without the context, in the README on your homepage on your repo, explain what each repository is on your GitHub account, for example. Explain what each repository is and why you created it, so that somebody who's visiting your site, it's sort of like creating a portfolio out of garbage, you know, like saying I did this repo because I was trying to solve this problem. I didn't get the answer I wanted, but at least let me get, you know, one step further, something like that. I don't know if you had any other tips.
No, I think that's a really good and valid point. And I suppose I can only say that even if it doesn't look great, that I personally, if I were employing, would rather have somebody that can give it a go. To me, that shows the attitude. It might not show quite the aptitude's quite there, but I think that can be taught. Obviously, what you said, adding that extra information in there is really important. And I think if anybody who's interested watches James Alderman's videos on portfolios, he always says that, you know, you almost need a brief first and then an explanation of what you did, why you did it, what the result was. He probably talks about it a little bit more in digital marketing reviews that he does, but I think it is a really good tip to follow, to have that kind of thorough explanation alongside it, so it's not just out of context, as you've mentioned. So I guess that would be my only tip, not being a super expert in the software development side of things. So I apologise, Ilesh, I have gone where I'm terrible at going over time. I do have my contact details there, and I'll put James Alderman's link to his YouTube in the chat. And then if anybody, because I've taken up way too much time already, if anybody has any other questions, I'm either happy to stay towards the end, or anybody wants to ask me any questions on LinkedIn, that would be very welcome.
Oh, great, Nicola. Does anyone have any quick questions for her right now?
No, I don't have any.
No. I guess one quick question is probably something you touched upon with the AI stuff coming into play. What do you get some CVs that are coming through that are purely just AI generated and, like, you know, completely obvious to spot, or what's your handling of those?
Yeah, for digital marketing, when I look at them, generally straight in the bin. If it's a digital marketing trainer, straight in the bin. I would look at it a little bit differently with software development, and I guess it would depend what else I had in front of me, and that depends on the package that you're offering as a company. If it's a graduate scheme where it's offering a degree in digital marketing, an apprenticeship degree, they're going to have 10,000 applicants. It's going to be crazy. You're not going to get through. If you're offering national minimum wage and it's a small town in South Wales, they might not have that pick up. It depends on the pick of other candidates as to whether you're going to get through the door or not. But it is less important, I would say, for software development. But for the prime jobs, for the best jobs, you really don't want it to look like it's come from AI. It turns me off, even though I use it myself extensively. And if I have used it, I reference it. You know, I've told you quite clearly here today, I've used AI for that purpose. In fact, I've written a CV guide. It is mainly aimed at junior digital marketers, but a lot of the things will be relevant. If anybody wants that, I'm happy to send them a copy, but it is written with AI, which I say right at the beginning. And if it hadn't have been written with AI, I wouldn't have written it at all. Sometimes done's better than perfect.
Yeah, definitely. It's more almost an aid to what you're doing rather than actually taking over what you should be doing anyway. So that makes sense. Cool. Okay, that's very great presentation, Nicola. And thank you for that. And Abdul, are you ready for yours?
Yeah, I am.
Thank you.
Okay.
So just let us know when you're ready.
Yeah, let me show my presentation. My screen visible?
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, Ilesh, thank you so much for this opportunity. I am very grateful of you. Introducing myself, I am Abdul Raouf, front-end developer at Built-in-Soft. I started learning on myself in mid-2022, and in November 2022, I was able to start my as a professional at Built-in-Soft, and currently I am working as front-end developer at Built-in-Soft. Now, today's presentation is specific to the point do's and don'ts for new developers. I have divided my audience into 3 sections. Like the first one is prospective beginners, the one who are thinking to be the developers, beginners, the one who have just started the development, and 6 months experienced developers. If I talk about the objective is simple: to guide the newbies in their path, so by the time they can take the best out of the field and can avoid the mistakes which others have been doing and learn from them. Because in initial stage of learning, the new minds get very confused. So to avoid that confusion, they can look up to the seniors and try to be away from the things that their seniors faced in their journey. I've collected the points from different developers and will try to put them here so one can take benefit from it. If I talk about the material, I will be, the content of my presentation. I have divided into 3 sections, and it is totally related to the audience I mentioned. Like the first is who can be a developer, do's and don'ts for new developers, and tips for experienced developers. Now the procedure I will be following, I have divided my 20-minute time frame into 5 sections. First 2 minutes, I'll be doing the introduction. In the upcoming 5 minutes, I'll be presenting who can be a developer. Next, do's and don'ts for new developers. Thirdly, tips for experienced developers. And lastly, I'll be putting the conclusion in 2 minutes. Now, moving further, who can be a developer? I would like to present 3 points here. The first is passionate for problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. Like if you're a person who sees a problem in the life and wants to solve it, then you're most welcome. And while solving that problem, if you think critically but not emotionally, you will kill it. By harnessing the principles of problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity, developers can engineer the solutions that revolutionize industries and improve quality of life, whether it's in healthcare, where software aids in diagnostic and treatment planning, or agriculture, where data-driven approaches optimize crop yields and resource management. The impact of development is profound. If I give you an example, like how we were able to, save the discoveries of Stephen Hawking, like how we were able to save his magical discoveries, the Big Bang Theory, and the facts about the astronomy. Of course, the software, development and coding and that stuff was there. Now, moving next, if you have a diverse background and you have totally different interest, then you're also welcome in the development field. If I personally talk about myself, that I have a background of cooking. Now, just take an example that there is nothing in cooking right now. Right now, there are a lot of softwares. Just take an example that there is no much in cooking related, tech. I can build a software. I can see the gap in, my cooking field, which is my background field, and I can build a software which will take the ingredients from you and will list down all the, amazing dishes which you can make using those ingredients. Now, moving forward, if I talk about medical field, like if you're a person who is coming from a medicine and he start the development skills, now what he will do, he will look up into his field, medicine, and he will, see at the gaps, he will look at the gaps which can be filled using his development skills. And what will that result out? It will result out in EHC, electronic healthcare, prescribing softwares, HMS softwares, appointment scheduling, asthma monitoring, asthma monitoring devices, tracking patient apps, medical billing, medical imaging softwares, lung cancer detections, medical diagnostic softwares. No, these are only 10 points I just mentioned. Just take an example, like a person coming from, medicine, and he will look at the gaps, and he's the one who can look at those specific gaps which can be filled out using his development skills, and he will, fill that gap using his development skills. If I talk about agriculture, if a person is coming from the agriculture and he can fill, the gaps of agriculture, which will result out in crops optimization, reduce resource usage, tracking livestock health, predicting weather, analyzing soil data, monitoring crop health, and predicting pest outbreaks. So if you're a person who has total diverse background, he's from fashion, he's from psychology, neurosciences, from wherever he is, and he is interested in solving the problem and filling the gaps. After learning the development skills, he can fill out those gaps. Let's move to the next point. Like, if you have this quality, then you can, you are most welcome into the development. If you're a continuous learner, if you are a person who just don't want to get into one skill and want to earn from that for the whole life, you are most welcome into the development field. If you're a person who is always inspired to learn new things, as Ted mentioned, that you have to learn more than one languages. And if we just look at him, he's very inspired till now. Like, I will credit the development that is keeping him inspired. So if you're a continuous learner, I want to, always learn the things new and new stuff coming up. And like, if we talk about AI, that it wasn't 10 to 12 years ago, it wasn't there. So now it is at peak. Now new things are coming up, IoT is there, and you will be continuously learning the things and remain always inspired. Okay, let's move to the next section, which is my main section, like do's and don'ts for new developers. I would like to, disclaim a thing that these are totally the points which I try to collect from the developers who has less experience than 2 years. So, they can relate more to the new developers, because if I could, if I would have collected the points from the experienced developers which have more than 4 or 5 years of experience, then they could less relate to the new developers. So that's why I try to get the points from the developers who have experience like me, like 1.5 years or 2 years of experience. So moving further, if I talk about do's, the first do is nail the basics. This is the thing I have felt in the new developers, then that when they start learning the things, they don't properly nail the basics. They just try to fulfill the you say, like, we have just done it, let's move to the framework, let's move to the next process. Like, in beginning, they just want to speed up the process. When I'm talking about the basics, I mean the basic programming concepts, the algorithm, and data structures. So if you have nailed the basics, then putting in future, when the load of development will be upon you, you can handle that easily. Just if we relate this to a building base, so if a building has strong bases, so in the future, if more load is put upon that, then it can handle it. But if the bases are weak, then it will fall down. The same is in the programming. So if you have strong basics, then you can handle that. Practice regularly. Now, this is the thing I totally believe in, because this is a real experience that has been with me, with my friend, one of my friend. He is right now, he's doing the development, but initially when he started, he did it for 5 months, and then he left off due to some reason. And then when he came back after 3 months, he just, how much time it took? It took 3.5 months to be at the same level where he left off. So that's what the programming is all about. You don't practice it on the regular basis, you'll forget it. It totally doesn't mean that you have to practice it on daily basis. Initially, you may have to, but by the time the gap will be increasing. Like, you will be doing twice a week, and 1 time a week, and 1 time a month, and that's how. But you gotta practice it on a regular basis if you want to keep in your mind. Complete one thing before moving to the other. Now, this thing has been happening to me too. Initially, when I started the development, when I was learning SCSS, which is a preprocessor of CSS, when I was learning that, in this meantime, I watched some videos on YouTube, and I got inspired of learning JavaScript. I started both of them, and I ended up nothing. Then I put a break that I should learn first, like I should complete one of them, and then I should jump to the next one. So I completed SCSS, and then I jumped to the JavaScript, and that was really easy. That's how I learned it, and it became easy for me. So if I talk about the task, you have two tasks. Just take an example. You have authentication, and on the other hand, you have payment integration. Now you're doing the authentication, and on the same time you start payment integration. That it may mess up. So first try to complete one task like authentication, and then jump to the next task. It will become easy for you. The next point is seek help and feedback. Like as Ted told, that you have to be lead of yourself. I would add some point here that if like in the beginning, you initially you should drill down. I mean to say that you should research completely by yourself. And if you think that after giving a lot of time, you're not even getting a clue, to get the clue you can seek help from others. So it will speed up process a bit. Like Ted mentioned, that you can put it on the GitHub issue, or somewhere blog post that this issue, or Stack Overflow, and you can look for help there. Always learn from surroundings. This is the most favorite point of mine. I would like to describe it with an example. Just take an example. You are working upon one application, and that is related to bank only, and it took you 4 to 5 months to work upon. And so in 4 to 5 months you are working upon one application. It means you covered only one application. So if you are looking at the right side of your desk, and also the left side, also the front side, also the back side, you have 4 other persons that are working upon different applications. And if you keep looking into them, if you keep looking into the problems they are facing and the solutions they applied and they got fixed, now you have 4 further applications in that specific time frame. In that specific 4 months, you will be able to work upon, like it will be same like you worked upon 5 applications, because you have been through those problems. You have seen which solutions they provided, they used, and in future you may use them. So these were the goals. And moving further, if I talk about the don'ts, the first one is don't get discouraged. Initially, when you're learning the development, initially the graph will go very high. From the zero, the things will come very easy, and you will be learning them easily, and it will feel that, yeah, I'm the superhero, and I'm doing it. And the graph will be just like this, that you'll be going from 0 to 180, and you'll be feeling like, I can understand it. I can just do it. And then suddenly a problem will come up, and it will take you 2 to 3 days or even a week. And then your morale will low down. And after that, the graph goes like this linearly. The more you put, the more you get. But many developers leave there, so don't get discouraged. This is the point that comes in every developer's life, and this is the part of it. So after that, the learning will be continuous. Now the next point is don't skip documentation, which Ted mentioned, that some of the developers try to do the different things, like moving a line of the code above and top and seeing that either it works or not. So instead of doing that, what should be done, that the real problem should be looked up, why it is coming up. What, initially when we are trying to learn something, what our mind does, it tries to make the patterns. The more difficult it is, the more easy patterns it tries to make. And the next time that thing comes up, our mind goes back and try to find the same specific pattern that solve the problem. So if you don't know the problem, the pattern which was made, that will be used. Now, if you understand the problem, why it is happening, what is behind it, So if you know that, it will be easy to drill down into the problem. Otherwise, what will happen? The same problem will be there, but it will be in a different form, and you will not be able to recognize it because your mind didn't, didn't made a pattern for that specific form. It made a pattern for some other form. So that will, blow your confidence that I don't know much in future. So what should be done? It should be done that the documentation should be read and the problem should be, the behind the scenes of the problem should be, it should be known, and that's how the problem should be solved. Don't rely on others too much. Previously, I said take help from others, but taking help too much from others is not good. The same thing will happen, which I mentioned above, that your mind will seek help every time. Then next time you will see a problem, and the first solution your mind will give, just go to the senior. Just go to senior, take help from him. Your mind will go into the comfort zone, and it will not, let you work hard, let you research, and let you, put your head on it. Don't ignore soft skills. As Nicola mentioned, that many software developers ignore the soft skill, but it should not be, because while learning coding, we are just focusing upon coding most of the time and initially. But as the time passes, we should be working upon our software skills too. Soft skills too, like communication, time management, because if you are not able to present that what is in your mind, you have something in your mind and you are not able to present it, you're not able to ask the client what he needs and why he needs it, you will not be valued by the company, the one who employed you, because if you're not dealing with the client and you're just doing coding. But you know what will happen? A specific person will be leading you who knows how to deal with the clients and how to get the requirements, and you'll be working under him. Don't stop learning. And this is, a point where some developers, this is a rare case, by the way, some of the developers get stuck, they learn some specific skill and they start feeling that this is enough. That's why I mentioned, if you want to be a continuous learner, then you should enter this, then you are most welcome into the development field. So if you have learned some skill, then don't stop learning, keep learning the new things. And last but not the least, if it works, don't touch it. Okay. The next section is tips for experienced developers. Encourage specialization, as I asked, like Ted, that what is your specific niche? In the beginning, you will be doing something specifically, and you'll be working upon something. And in future, you have to recognize your, specialization. In which are you good in data? Are you good in, UI? Are you good in, DevOps or something like that, version controlling and deployment or something like that. So you have to pick your niche and then drill into it. Next, connections and networking. And what does it mean? It does not mean the networking of, computers. It really means that when you be in the development, after some time, you should start making the connections, because in future they will help you a lot. The next is share experiences. Let's say you learned something. You see, if you share that thing to others, and the questions will be coming from the next person, and that questions and your discussion will save your specific points, or that specific thing that you just have learned in your brain easily. Because as I mentioned, our brain tries to make the patterns, and the specific pattern will be made that this question was aroused from the next person, and it will, make a hint to remember that thing. Stay adaptable. This is the point which, in this age, many developers fear to be, like, they very fear to be adaptable to the new skills. I have discussed it with many developers, like how do you consider the AI in specifically the one I have talked to. They just fear from it, like how will they be able to do it? It's very tough, and without even exploring it. So if a new thing is coming up, it's there to, it's there to ease us. It's not there to damage us. So what we should be doing, we should be staying adaptable to that, that AI. Just take an example of I am making a car rental application, and in that application, I have to process the pictures that either they are not dirty or not violent. So how can I do that if I am not taking the help of AI? If I'm not taking the help of AI, how I will be doing it? One thing is, how can I do it that the user will upload the image and it will go to some specific admin and he will approve it. And next, if he comes to edit the car or booking, and then he again have to make a request to the admin, and then admin will be checking the image. So if I'm using the AI, I'm processing the image on the runtime, and it will increase the user experience. So the things are there to increase to ease us. They are not there to damage us. So we have to be adaptable to them. Last, balance work and life, and this is the thing that most developers, not most developers, by the way, many developers are not able to balance. Like, they just start coding and they are doing it 24/7. This should not be done. Sleep is there, friends are there, family is there, your life is there, you have some rights upon you too. So if you are not doing it, you may work for 4 to 5 years on very peak level, but after that you'll be looking some bad results. So you have to balance your work and life equally. Lastly, I'll be concluding my presentation. If you're a person who is passionate about problem solving, have a total diverse background, you're most welcome. And honestly speaking, if you're a continuous learner, then you should be in this field, because this is a field which is never going to, stop. It's things coming up again and again and again. You will come across many challenges, so don't get discouraged and embrace the challenges with motivation and face them willingly. And last, stay calm, stay happy, and keep learning. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
That's brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Abdul. Do you have any questions, Abdul? Yeah, Ted.
Yeah, Ted.
Well, I thought it was really interesting that I think I was promoting actually kind of not specializing for the junior developers so that they get experience and see sort of the overlap between the different technologies, frameworks, and that sort of thing. And you're sort of suggesting that people begin to specialize. And I think maybe is that as you get older, as you get more experience, is that the idea?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I just wasn't sure.
Brilliant. Any other questions, Abdul? If not, I can probably think of one. So Abdul, great presentation with the do's and don'ts. Do you feel like there sometimes could be a case of people overdoing some of the do's and so over not doing as much as the don'ts, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it happens basically when you are working on the basics, and you may spend 1.5 years. So to keep that, in a balance, that you are not much spending time upon it, you gotta be taking help from, some seniors, that how much time should I be giving to this specific thing and how much time I should not.
Okay, no, that's great. And I think a great sort of example in your sort of slide deck was the fact that, no one should be discouraged to join a different field, right? So if you from a medical background, from a different background, there's opportunities for you to kind of learn something new. As long as you're aspiring and you're willing to do this and take up that challenge. I think that's one of the good things from all of the presentations today, is the fact that there's opportunities for people to make that turn to a different field, or different, like going to tech, for example, if they wanted to. So thanks for obviously sharing all of that stuff as well. But thank you so much, everyone, and have a nice sort of evening or whatever you guys are going to be doing.